Hello and welcome to the Exam Hall. This is the podcast where I sit down with a guest and we answer questions from what is known as the hardest exam in the world, the All Souls College Oxford Fellowship Exam. My name is Cherry. I am an ex-education professional, soon to be uni student, and I am having stir fry for dinner, baby. If you are a returning guest, welcome back. Thanks for returning. I'm glad I haven't scared you off. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, then let me clue you in on what's going on. All Souls College Oxford is maybe the most prestigious and exclusive academic institution in the world. Awarding only 2 fellowships per year, each applicant must sit 4 3-hour exams. 2 specialist papers and 2 general papers, which is where we will be drawing our questions from today. If you are one of the lucky 2 selected, you are given ample funding and opportunity for a 7-year period to complete any research project of your choice. To be eligible to apply, you must already have a degree from Oxford or be currently studying there at postgraduate level. However, here at the Exam Hall, we have no eligibility criteria. Everybody is welcome. Everybody is equal. So, without further ado, let me welcome my guest for today's episode. It is the one and only Kate McNally.
Hello.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Burr, 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 burr.
How you doing, Kate?
I woke up at noon.
Perfect.
I got on a bus and I ended up here. A lot of traffic though for today.
I think it's a strike day, so
Oh, that's what it might have been.
yeah. I was like, why are there loads of kids out and about today?
Yeah.
Why are these school children not in school?
There were a
back
lot of
in
school. Get kids back in school.
I don't want to be seeing any children anywhere.
Get them out of my face.
Get them out.
Get them out of here.
Get them out of here.
And now I have 3 beverages. Well, now I'm down to 2 beverages, but now I had 3 beverages.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of living the life.
Can you give us a beverage check? Can you take us through those beverages?
So the theory is you need 3 beverages. 1 for energy.
1
for fun.
Fun.
And 1 for hydration.
Hydration.
Today, our energy is a Jimmy's canned coffee, original, with actual milk, which maybe wasn't the best idea.
Ooh.
I'm not lactose intolerant, but we're trying to not drink milk. And I have a lovely glass of water that was provided by Cherry.
You're welcome.
And that was for hydration. And then for fun, we have an aloe vera drink with real aloe pieces, which I love this because it comes with a snack in the drink.
If you're listening, please call into the show and tell us what beverages you are currently consuming.
It's like the YouTube videos. This is going to be a long one. So grab yourself a snack and a cup of tea and get ready.
It's going to be a long one, folks.
It's going to be and it's like a 10-minute video about how to like make bunting for your dorm room.
Absolutely. Well, Kate, welcome to the Exam Hall. I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh my goodness, I'm so nervous.
Kate,
I don't test well.
You don't test well?
No.
Well, we have a very strict criteria here.
That's what I
that
heard.
criteria is absolutely nothing at all.
Oh,
the criteria for being here is a pulse. Just as long as you're alive, not
So
really
you don't
interested.
accept the undead?
I don't accept the undead.
No vampires,
No.
zombies, immortals? Are they dead? If you never die, are you really alive?
Oh. We're getting into some...
I just want to talk about vampires.
Let's see if they've got any questions about vampires in these past questions. We're getting into some philosophical quandaries about what it means to be alive.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about
Let's
today.
move on from this. Let's move on from this. I don't want an existential crisis, please. Kate,
Yes.
can you tell me what qualifications you have to be here today? And we are using qualifications in a very liberal sense. Those may be qualifications that you gain traditionally from a recognized academic institution, or they could be qualifications from the School of Life, baby.
Yeah, School of Life. Okay, my qualifications are as followed. I am a reformed horse girl. I am an American living in London.
Are you an American werewolf living in London?
Oh, yeah. That's how we both sound. That was so bad. And what else? Oh, I had such early access to the internet because I am at that sweet spot of being born in 2000 where I had, the family computer. So there was no computer, like no laptops. But then as I got older, then we started having, the laptops in the house. And I started watching the adoption of the iPhone and the iPod touches. And now the, computers that have taken over our world. So yeah, this kind of growing up in this age of when the internet was really kind of, I think, popping off, and trying to navigate that, kind of had to do that on my own. But yeah, other than that, I think I was a very responsible child. And do I have any other qualifications? No, I think that's about it.
Stunning.
Thank you. I've made it this far, so
yeah. I feel like just surviving every day, that's qualification enough.
Qualification enough.
If you get through the day not being hit by a bus,
oh yeah,
that is a qualification in itself. Well done, you.
The amount of jaywalking I do, I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet.
Well, today's question comes from 2008.
Wow.
It is from no, it's not. It's from 2018.
Okay, I was gonna be like I was 8, but now I'm 18.
No, yeah.
No, I'm not 8. I'm 20. Never mind, just ignore me.
Okay. Today's question comes from 2018. It is from the General Paper 2. It is question 12. And it is, quote, television is a form of entertainment which permits millions of people to listen to the same joke at the same time and yet remain lonesome. T.S. Eliot. Are social media any better? So it's a quote and then a question.
So the quote automatically makes me think about, when television was the spectacle is not the word, that an event, right?
Yeah.
So a show would come on television and it would only exist at that time, right?
Yeah.
You have no recording device. You can't record the show. You can't record the newscast. You can't record the new episode. And it airs at the same time for all. And so it would be this kind of thing where you would all surround the TV, a family, and watch this show.
Yeah.
Or this, I think I would always think of like telethons or whatever. Like you would watch this big spectacle.
Yeah.
And it would be like watching a play because it's happening in that moment or it's being presented to an audience in that moment, but you're not in a theater with strangers. You're most likely in your home with your family. And the internet is very similar with this kind of like these moments that are happening right now, and you are experiencing it with all these other people. You're experiencing the excitement around a new TV show, which is ironic because we were just talking about TV, or some big event has happened or a scandal, and you are all experiencing this event together, more so than I would say if you read it like in a newspaper, because you're all conversing about it. You're putting down comments, you're reacting, you're sharing, you are being part of the conversation in your own way, but you are alone in whatever space you are consuming that media in. You're probably, maybe you bring it up at brunch or at, work because it's a big thing and you're, talking to someone about it. But in the moment when you're consuming that media, consuming that moment, you're most likely alone on your phone, in bed, cooking something on the loo, who knows where you, watch your TikToks. But that's what, like, when I hear that question, that's what I start thinking about, how it's so interactive. And so we're all experiencing a singular moment, but at the same time, we're not actually with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this question is really interesting for how it brings together media at two very different points in time. The quote's from T.S. Eliot.
Yeah.
Born in 1888. Television in the UK started, I think, 1936 is when broadcasting started in the UK. Let me verify that. Yeah, regular television broadcasts in the United Kingdom started in 1936. But then it's also bringing in social media as well.
Yeah.
I can't find exactly when T.S. Eliot sort of said this quote or wrote this quote. I can't find the exact origin of it, just from my brief Googling. How do we start tackling this question? Because it's so meaty in how it brings all these things together.
I'll look at it again. 'Cause I feel like it is so meaty that I can't like contain all of it. There's just this one quote.
I think what initially sort of sticks out to me is like when it's sort of talking about that event you were talking about. Television in its sort of infancy was an event. Everyone watched the same thing at the same time. There was a very limited, very limited selection of things to watch. So, everyone was watching the same thing at the same time. Everyone was listening to the same joke at the same time. There was no way to record it. There was no way to go back.
Yeah. It's not going to have a rerun.
No. However, nowadays, I feel like there's so much just on the TV.
Yeah.
Let's start just at television.
Just at television.
There's so much on the TV.
Yeah, there's so many shows now that it's kind of like, oh, what do I prioritize watching?
Yeah.
Or watching shows becomes a chore. And so I'm studying film, and I am, someone that's done acting both on stage and in film. And this is something that I love, that I really do enjoy. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. But I have become one of those people that watching or starting a show or even starting a movie becomes labor. It's like, oh, there's so much to watch. And I think a lot of people have come into that where it's like there's just too much content. And so you don't have kind of this like, and I think you don't have the kind of those event shows anymore. There's just so much to consume, not even thinking about all the content to consume after the fact, after you watch the show.
I'd say maybe Succession.
Yeah.
Had that. And that only had that in its sort of later seasons, but I think the Succession finale, I don't even watch Succession. I couldn't avoid it because everyone was talking about it. So I think that sort of sense of event was there with that.
So I think there's a craving for the sense of event. I think we had shows and there was an event to it, right? So there was this like this moment, this excitement of the release of what's happening next. And then obviously enough with streaming, we started getting the show in all of its entirety. You could binge watch it, you could finish it, right? And you would watch the whole show in a weekend, and then you would go and to like the water cooler at work and talk about it.
Yeah.
And that became the event, is when this new show dropped and you had to watch it really quickly. But I think about kind of like Game of Thrones, how everyone watched every episode of that like an event. My whole family would get together and watch it. I was not allowed to. I was considered too young at the time. So I would go sit in a different room doing something else, and my family would watch the new Game of Thrones episode. But everyone talked about it, right? And I think a lot of shows now are actually trying to pull away from the drop the whole season and are trying to do these weekly releases. It's technically the old way of doing things, but one, it allows the hype for your show to last longer. Two, it allows for people to analyze and dissect episodes before the next episode. And it allows people to get excited and not overwhelmed by how much content they have to consume before they get spoilers, right? So I'm only 3 episodes behind. Well, I can catch up on that and not miss anything. So it kind of creates the 1 a week episode creates the community that I think we all felt like we lost with binging.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, that's such an interesting point of view, and almost conflicting to what T.S. Eliot says, because he's saying television is inherently lonesome because you're not, he's sort of implying with this quote that because we're not in the same room, there isn't that sense of connection. So it's interesting, this idea that no, we're trying to get back to what T.S. Eliot was saying was so lonesome. Yeah,
I guess, because I think he's probably comparing it to the experience of going to the theater or going to see a movie, and you're in the space with the people. And I think that is definitely something that is gained from like going to the movie theater and being with people in the theater and having like, your candy and your snacks, and the trailers start and it gets dark and it's great. And being in a theater watching a live performance, being surrounded by that energy.
A sense of a collective experience.
But I think it's I think with social media or the way that it's easy to communicate with people now with social media, or how we now discuss television when you're at work or when you're with your friends, it's not the same type of experience, but it is a recreation or reconstruction of trying to create that experience.
Yeah.
And people have watch parties, right? So with the Game of Thrones, people invited their friends over so they could experience the TV show together. But that's, I guess, for special events.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think that there's, I don't think, I don't know where I was going with that one. There's something about the lonesome part. I think the lonesome part is so interesting. Why is it lonesome? Why can't can you watch it and have a very visceral personal experience with a show? Why is that a problem, right? Maybe it allows you to be able to connect with something more so than you would in public.
Yeah. Well, sometimes watching something, whether it be TV or film or theatre, whatever, that it brings, I often find it doesn't make me feel so lonely sometimes. 'Cause there's something about seeing like your own experience reflected, maybe not exactly, but being able to see certain things in other people's stories does bring a sense of sometimes it can make you feel not so lonely.
Yeah. I mean, because when we look at kind of like at film, just photography, or we look at film and then we look at movies, there's always, because it's such a brand new medium, right? Like all the other kind of art forms have existed for much longer.
I mean, film is less than 100 years old.
It's still brand new, right? We're still, figuring out all these new ways to deal with it and work with it. Not even just talking about animation, like that's a whole nother field. But there's always been kind of fear about it, or like it's not as good as other things, or it's not as, there's always been authors that are like, oh, film is going to destroy this, or when people start experimenting with film, they're like, well, this is going to ruin film. You're being like telling stories, you're not showing, reality. That's what a camera's supposed to. So there's always been these kind of like problems with film and the changes to film and that kind of thing. And I think one of those things is the fear of, maybe that's where the lonesomeness is coming from, this fear that this new art form is actually going to destroy something that already exists, this community of theater and the movie theater, which I think is not something to, ignore. I think there is this kind of isolation to it, and anything to an extreme is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
But I think you can't dismiss the positives, this kind of, being able to be with yourself and watch this art form or watch this piece, something that could be hindered if you're surrounded by other people for whatever reason. And we're really getting deep into it.
Yeah. We sort of started tackling the first part of that question, which is the quote.
Yeah.
This is what the question is actually asking. It's not asking our opinions on the quote. It's asking, is our social media any better?
Yeah.
God.
So is social media really just creating like loneliness or masking it? Is that that's how I'm kind of seeing the question.
Is it creating these shared experiences?
Yeah.
Is it just another form of television, or is it increasing loneliness?
Yeah.
And this question is from 2018, so I feel like this is a very interesting question to have pre-pandemic. When when we were mid-pandemic, social media was, the primary form of communication.
Yeah.
Work was happening over Zoom and Teams, and everything was happening over the medium of the internet, pretty much.
And it's also pre-TikTok, if you think about it. Musical.ly was a thing, but it hadn't changed to TikTok yet. I think that was 2019. Or, I'm going to say 2019 is when TikTok became a thing.
Yeah.
Bought out Musical.ly and completely kind of shifted how that platform worked, rebranded and became, the massive juggernaut that it is. Juggernaut. I like how you say it better. I'm like, juggernaut. I think See, social media is interesting because the concept of social media, which I think we all kind of understand now is not the case, is that it's real life, real people, real things that are happening. Whereas we've always accepted that TV, you know, even reality TV isn't true to life, is kind of this like false, it's you know, fake, or it's fantasy. So I think with looking at social media, I think it can have more of that danger of like the loneliness, because now it is perpetuating this world that maybe you feel like you're not a part of.
Yeah, well, a lot of social media, TikTokers and vloggers and YouTubers, they are very intentionally acting as if they're talking to a friend.
Yeah.
So they'll be holding the camera in their hand, and it's like they're, you know, I think there's a lot less of this audience separation when it comes to the internet.
Yeah.
And also just in the way, like, this is slightly moving away from the question, but something, you know, stuff like YouTuber conventions and YouTube meetups, there's a lot more of opportunity to actually interact with the kind of social media personality now. So there's a lot more of an illusion of like, no, you're not my fan.
The
you're my friend.
parasocial, yeah.
There's this parasocial relationship.
Exactly.
Which is
which
a new thing.
In theory, you're thinking, okay, so you're creating these like, you know, connections or whatever. Maybe you're going to feel less lonely, but I feel like it would make someone feel more lonely.
Yeah.
Because that person, though they give you wonderful, you know, entertainment or wonderful connection, they're making you feel things like when you watch TV, they're physically not able to actually be in this like friendship or relationship with you. So when, you know, it's needed or when it counts, you don't have this relationship with someone to, you know, tell your good news to or get you through these rough times. And I think people do try and reach out, and sometimes you have that where people are like putting very personal things out in the comments.
Yeah.
And you're kind of not caught off guard, but you're kind of wondering, how would this like social media star respond to that, right?
Yeah.
So I think like in theory, like, okay, well, how would you be lonely if you have this, you know, relationship or this idea that you're connected with this, you know, internet content, but in reality that connection isn't there for the very human things of sharing your highs and sharing your lows, accepting someone else's highs and someone else's lows, you know. That's what I think.
You're seeing the best of people, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, on moving away from sort of influencer social media, just on social media with your friends.
Just on your Instagram.
Yeah.
The people
you're seeing
you know.
the best of your friends.
Oh, yeah.
You're seeing you know.
You're seeing the peak of people.
Yeah. You're seeing when they've been done up, the one selfie out of the 20, 50, 100 they took. And I'm guilty of this.
Oh, yeah.
I'm guilty of this. I'm not condemning anyone when I say this, but you're seeing people at their best.
Yeah.
So you know, you're seeing your friends at their best and you're going, why am I not?
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of comparison
and this kind of like what I was saying earlier, this idea of like social media, you're seeing the real, air quotes, the real world, you're seeing everything in front of you, and so if you feel like your life isn't fitting into what you're seeing, then you might feel like you're not in the real world. You might feel like you are somehow misplaced, and that must feel very lonely. You say, well, you know, their clothes are fitting them that way, or they have all these friends are doing these fun things all the time, or their career is really taking off, or, you know, they're being so vulnerable and open about a hard time and everyone's flooding the comments with support. Well, that doesn't happen to me. That's not what my life's like. That must feel very isolating, even though you're, you know, consuming that content. Yeah. And even though in the back of your brain, you know, it's not actually real. And again, like I'm guilty of that, seeing that and feeling like, oh, am I not living in the same world as other people? But then also thinking, okay, well, this is the 10 seconds that I see in this moment of their life.
Yeah, exactly. I'm interested in this idea of like a collective experience in social media. And I mean, relating it to TV, things like the Succession finale, there was a sense of collective experience on Twitter, Tumblr and TikTok because everyone was talking about it. Everyone was talking about it and theorizing. So there's a sense of, I didn't even watch the show. And I was excited. I was like, oh my God.
I hope that rich guy yells at that rich guy.
Yeah.
And there's a capacious large bag. That's all I know. I watched episode 1 and all I know, there's a capaciously large bag.
Capacious.
Is it that what it is?
Yeah, that's Succession.
Yeah.
She's got a capaciously large bag. But see, we don't watch that show, and we know that social media has given this, like, with memes, with there's a sense of collective experience that if you got like a group of 14-year-olds in this room and you said bombastic side-eye, they would all go mad because they've all seen the same thing. They're all
bombastic.
While there's this, I think it's so interesting, while there is this sense of like oversaturation and like there's so much on the internet and there's so much on streaming services, there's so much content to get through. I feel like people are constantly saying, have you seen X? And I'm like, oh no, I'm trying to get through Y.
Yeah.
And then after that, Z is then next on my watch list. Like there's so much to get through. But at the same time, the internet has so many like collective things.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely, we were talking about it earlier, this craving for the event. This like, there's definitely people want this long-lasting community. Yeah. And I think I've seen it a lot in social media where people talk about how memes right now are going a lot faster. And that's with kind of TikTok.
Yeah.
A meme will pop up and be relevant, or a sound will be relevant for a week, maybe 3 if it's, really doing well. And then you've got like the classics, air quote, which last a long time.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see how shortened the lifespan of a meme's become, because then I think about, okay, what's a long lasting meme that was on TikTok? Berries and cream. That was there forever, right? That was a long one. But that's not as long as kind of like the rage faces, or
those
like,
sort of those first memes.
Those first memes,
like the text.
Those lasted forever, and that's like obviously not necessarily the same as like this community, but it is very similar into this sense of like this long-lasting joke that people would understand, right, and was kind of considered to be continuously humorous. Yeah. And so the meme lifespan is getting shorter and shorter. So the community around a joke is getting turnaround is faster. And I think that also happens when we look at the events. So like something will happen and then everyone will be talking about it for maybe a few days, maybe a week. And you have this community created around it, all these people talking about it. I'm thinking about like the submarine, right? That was everywhere on my For You pages, and now it's gone, right?
If this happened like back in 2012, we would still be talking about that on the internet.
Talking about it, and it would still be this thing that's like constantly referenced. Like now I see it in meme pages and people already seem tired of the meme, right? Yeah. And so then you have this community created and then it crumbles. Yeah. And so then the same thing happens with TV shows. A show is dropped a full season, you have a week to watch it, a week to talk about it, and now we're done. Because there's no new content. It's not, the longevity is not at the same as when you have it come out once a week. And I think people are craving that. And that's why now these people are changing their show. Like Stranger Things did it kind of differently. They did it in 2 parts. Yeah. So you have the first part, people could binge, watch real fast. And then they had all this time to talk and theorize and see what's happening. And then they dropped the next one. And so I think people crave this kind of, this longevity community, and I think that's also why fandoms have stuck around for so long. Yeah, is because the content might be done, but you've now put yourself into a community that's constantly talking about this thing, and why like I think fandom communities are so powerful in kind of are so permeated in internet culture of trying to find community. If I didn't just talk in a circle there, I can't. Sometimes when you talk and you're like, did I say those words in the right order?
The fun thing about podcasting is really listening back to yourself constantly and being like, what was I talking about? What is this? Who am I?
Say any words? Or did I just stare blankly back at them and Morse code blink my thoughts? That's what I'm thinking right now. I'm just like, I know you can't, no one can see me, but you can see me. Yeah. I'm just staring at you. I'm giving secret messages through my eyes.
This is really engaging podcast content. Let's just like hold up signs at each other, like we're in that Taylor Swift video. Yeah. Or Love Actually, where he has
wrong? Tell him it's Christmas carolers. I watched that for the first time this year. Blew my mind.
Oh, Love Actually.
Love Actually, yeah. I just never seen it. And I watched it with the family.
I know I've watched it.
Yeah.
It's truly gone in one ear, out the other. I think I watched it when I was quite young.
Yeah.
So like,
I always thought Keira Knightley was in it more.
Who?
Is it Keira Knightley?
Oh yeah, Keira Knightley.
Yeah.
I look quite pretty.
I
think this idea of like a collective experience in the internet has moved. There's also this whole thing of like, kind of in the same vein as like the Ocean Gate submersible thing.
Which is crazy. It's called Ocean Gate in itself. It's not a play on like Watergate. It's just called actually Ocean Gate.
But there's this sense of a collective experience, which isn't storytelling based, like with television or even in like reality TV. It's all about the storyline.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a really interesting thing to be said for like drama on the internet and this want for a collective experience. As T.S. Eliot said, television, millions of people listening to the same joke.
Yep.
Now there's this big thing where like people get so much entertainment, and I'm one of these people. I'm not going to condemn anyone. I'm one of these people where it's like we get so much entertainment from like influencer drama.
Yeah.
It's no longer millions of people listening to the same joke. That is still happening, but it's millions of people watching the same, plane crash and burn, watching the same influencer crash and burn. And like this idea of like cancel culture.
Yeah.
And
trying to just watching the, the fire that is a influencer drama video, and then everyone is talking about it and everyone is, breaking it down, and then they start going through their old, content or and you're like watching this same car crash over and over again, but different people. Yeah. And this kind of collective that happens with, again, this event, this thing that is happening. I watch a drama, a video, a breakdown about like, in case you don't know what's going on, or like, let me tell you all of the details about all this stuff you've been seeing.
I know.
And like reaction videos. Yeah. Like people watching, I think of everyone has been reacting to the Miranda Sings, apology video with the ukulele.
So for context, for people who aren't chronically online, there is a YouTuber who had whose name was Colleen, and she was better known as her alter ego Miranda Sings, and she's a comedian. Air quotes. She would call herself a comedian.
She would label herself as a comedian. Yes.
She was basically she was accused of being in group chats with a lot of fans who were minors at the time, who were children, and just being generally inappropriate with her child fans.
Yes.
She decided to respond to these very serious allegations with a 10-minute ukulele response.
Yeah, with her singing.
And this is a bit of a tangent, but like I wasn't paying attention to this drama.
Yeah.
Until she responded with a 10-minute ukulele apology video. Like, it's truly insane. But that's sort of like what everyone's talking about.
Everyone's talking about it now, and you have all of these people that aren't just talking about it, but are showing themselves react to it. Yeah. So it's like you're watching,
with a friend,
like you're watching in the same room.
Yeah.
And then in the comments, everyone's talking about it, everyone's discussing it, and so it's, again, you're not in the same room physically, but the discussion is there. The community is there, and again, like we were saying, like, there's this loneliness that can come with it if that's the only space you exist in. I think I think a lot of people talk about this, it's dangerous we need to be careful with social media. You don't want to get too, sucked into the internet. You want to make sure, X, Y, and Z, you're, healthily consuming it.
Yes.
But I think it's important to see that, like, there are so many communities online. There's so much, there's so much craving for discussion, for community, for enjoying the same laugh, right? And I think you see that in, you just look at the comment section of something. I mean, don't look at the comments because you'll find some, crazy stuff in there. But you still have these people like all like talking to each other.
Yeah. Social media. It's
social media.
Social media. Put on my best David Attenborough voice. Social media.
We see the young millennial on social media.
It's in the title. It is media designed to be social.
Social, yeah.
Is it? How like, can something that is supposedly designed to connect people, and that does connect people.
Yeah.
How can that be lonesome?
Yeah, I think different social medias work in different ways. So like when I think of Instagram, I think of Instagram as less of a social media in the sense of you're interacting continuously with people. More so, directly, more so you are socially sharing content. And in that sense, like I'm posting a picture of myself or what I did or what I ate, and people are consuming that and people are commenting on that, and I do the same thing for them, but we are not directly communicating. I think Twitter, I don't really use Twitter, but from what I see, it's more of kind of a speaking out into the void and people interacting with each other, but it's not a continued social reaction. It is direct, but it feels less consistent. Like a conversation isn't going to continue later on. I see Tumblr as something that's more community based, right? So people have mutuals, I think, are talked about a lot more on Tumblr, and this idea that you have this community, these people that are, sharing content, creating friendships that are interacted with publicly, but are more direct. And then I think of TikTok as kind of like one of those few social medias that are actually meant for you to interact the most with strangers, right? Kind of closer to Twitter, but this idea that you are socially interacting with complete strangers and you are consuming their content, but you don't know them. So when you like and when you comment, it's not the same as Instagram.
Yeah.
But that's also me maybe just like
I think this
getting
I think you've touched on something. This idea of like interacting with strangers is really interesting. And I feel like I feel like social medias are trying to, there's a weird thing happening with social media where it feels like they're almost trying to move you away from interacting with people that you know. And a lot of what's happened with a lot of social medias is they've moved away from being like only the people you follow are in your timeline.
Yeah.
So on Twitter, they now have like the featured tab and it just shows you, and that was sort of like the default. And then you have to go into the For You tab, which is actually the people you follow. Instagram moved everything away from like chronological things. And like, it feels like in the algorithms of social media, they're trying to give you more and more. Yeah. Like, someone you don't know posting.
Someone you don't know. Yeah, and I know people are upset about that with like Instagram. They're like, I want to see the people that I follow. I don't want to see this random post from this random account on my feed. If I want to see that, I'll go to the explore page, you know. But I think then with TikTok, I think people don't necessarily want to see their friends as much. I think they want to see the content that is perfectly curated to them. So TikTok is more so to me like television, even though it's real people, then Instagram is to me like television. Instagram to me is, a yearbook, right? And all the people that I've ever met are there and I can see them and I can keep up with them. Where TikTok, I'm there to consume content. Like I think Instagram, I'm consuming content on Instagram, but it's not the same as when you consume content on TikTok.
Yeah. TikTok's so sort of curated.
Oh yeah, that algorithm knows you better than you know yourself.
Yeah.
Just crazy. You learn a lot about yourself.
Do you feel like when you use social media, have you found community? Have you found this sort of sense of collective, or do you find the sense of lonesomeness that T.S. Eliot talks about?
Yeah. So I think, like I said, I was on the internet from a young age, and I was really into fandom and kind of like, what are the shows that I was watching and was the content that people were making. And I never created content and I never posted content, but I interacted with it. So it was nice to see other people enjoying the same stuff that I liked and getting to interact with that, even though I didn't create anything back. So I was like an outsider in the community. Like I wasn't like, BFFs with someone and we were, trading fan art, but I was still felt a part of that community of people that enjoyed this show, right? Or enjoyed this media. So that was like one experience with it. But then also you might feel lonely because you don't have that in the outside world, right? You don't have friends that have the same interests as you, or you don't have people that are, get the same in-jokes in person. So that can feel quite, I think, lonely.
Yeah.
And then I also had a bout for about like a few months to almost a year of having some internet friends. And they were these people that I met on a Discord server. And there were inside jokes and we chatted all the time and we would, FaceTime, and some of us met up in person, and it was really exciting and lovely because I didn't have those connections in person at the time, right? Because I just moved to university when I was in the States. It was my first year there. So, that's a brand new community. You're trying to make friends. And I stumbled upon creating that community online. So that definitely helped with the real life loneliness I was feeling being new to university. And then, so obviously that was kind of like a counteraction to the real world loneliness, having people to like chat with and joke about and all that kind of fun stuff. And then, I think there's definitely community found on the internet. For me, again, it's still, I'm not a big, creating content for other people to consume, but I found myself kind of back in that area of when I was younger of finding the content and being part of the communities on the outside line, because I'm not, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's not interacting, but I'm not providing or something.
Yeah.
I can't think of the
word. You're not like creating any content.
Yeah, I'm not contributing anything. Right. I'm not contributing, but I'm still feel part of the community because someone's like, hey, in joke. And I'm like, oh, I get that. Ha ha ha. Yeah. So I think that's like my experience with being on internet community and kind of being a outside watcher, which I think is like quite interesting, being, knowing so much and being so, I get really analytical about it. I find it really fascinating, fandom culture, but not contributing anything and just kind of being this like fly on the wall. Yeah. And I think that maybe a lot of people are doing that. I don't think everyone that's like in a fan community is, doing stuff, but
actively contributing.
Yeah, but because I don't see those people because they're not contributing either, I feel like I'm the fly on the wall watching. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had a very similar experience with a Discord server and like finding myself in the server, and like I wasn't as involved in it as other people were, but like I was involved enough that like people would be like, hey, my screen name was Cheese. I went by Cheese. I was known in the server as Cheese. Hey Cheese. Hey Cheese.
So many fun names on. And
Discord. Like I was somewhat known in the server, and like and like that was happening in the pandemic when my sort of situation was all of my friends had moved to university and I'd started full-time work in a school. Yeah. But it was still the pandemic. So it was like I couldn't go out. I felt so lonely. I was just like, I couldn't go out. And it was so lovely being able, like going onto the server, and we'd have movie nights where we'd all watch a movie in the server. We had like talent nights and presentation nights.
Oh, I love a presentation night.
It was amazing. It was so much fun. And it was like a really interesting community. And I suppose the question is that an inherently lonely thing? Because we're not all in the same place. I know some of them were able to meet up because they were over in Canada. Fucking Canada.
How did you make it into a Canadian Discord server?
So there was a podcast called Blonde Radio, and there was a server along with the podcast, and it just like got really famous. So it's like people all over the world. I mean, I was
so
speaking
cool.
to people in the Philippines, but Brad.
Yeah, I mean, mine was all over the world.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, where are you? And they're like, Scotland. And I was like, I'm in America. What are you doing over there?
But like it was started by a guy called Brad, who's absolutely brilliant, and we still chat every now and then. He's really great. He was really encouraging with my poetry. He's just made him like self-published a little poetry book himself, and he still makes amazing YouTube videos, sort of like documentary style conversational videos. So everyone go, I think Brad Radio is the channel. It used to be called Blonde Radio, and then he like the Discord server. Let me double check this. Yeah, Brad Radio. Everyone go over to the Brad Radio YouTube channel.
Go right now.
Pause
this.
Stop listening to this podcast. Forget about it. Go listen to Brad Radio, because it's like it was like he just makes really cool videos, and it just sort of a server formed around it. And I think it's a really interesting study. Like I think Blonde Radio is a really interesting case study. That's what it was called. There was like merch for the server. It was like a server and a podcast. There was merch. I bought a jumper. But is that an inherently lonely thing? Because the majority of us weren't all meeting up.
Yeah.
We weren't all in the same room.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it was me alone in my bedroom at like weird hours, because we, he would be like streaming on Twitch at like on Canadian time, which would be like 1 o'clock in the morning for me, and I'd stay up to watch these streams. Is that an inherently lonely thing because I'm sat alone in my room with a screen? And I wasn't. I was interacting with them, but it was, unless you're on like a voice channel, when you're like texting in a chat, that's not. It is a conversation, but it's not the same, because you're curating a response. Yeah. And you're trying to say the thing, like I feel like when you're in a text conversation, you have the time to be like, I want to sound really cool and interesting, and like, how do I like carve a response that makes me the most interesting? Like how was that lonely? As T.S. Eliot says, was I? He sort of says TV is it's inherently lonesome, even though you're listening to the same joke, you remain lonesome.
Yeah, I think. So I think it's for the person to decide. Yeah. I think T.S. Eliot can't tell you if you're lonely or not. No offense to him, but
sorry,
T.S., but I'll just move out of the way. I think if you are in that moment, enjoying yourself and having a nice time, experiencing this content and interacting with these people, though it's not the traditional way of communication of being right in front of someone, right, and talking to them. If you don't feel lonely, I don't see a problem with it. I don't see an issue with it. If you are experiencing that and doing those things, and you're like, well, sometimes I do feel lonely. I don't think you need to cut that out of your life. I think then you need to make some choices. Okay, do I need to do I need to join societies? Do I need to go to, join a kickball club for, do I need to go and see a movie in a theater? Is that something so I think someone can decide that something is lonesome, but I don't think you necessarily need to be lonely, if that makes any sense at all.
No, it does.
This like, if you don't feel this feeling, right, even if something is inherently alone, doesn't mean that you are actually alone. I might be sitting in my room alone, but I am, interacting with people online. If that's not satisfying enough for me, I know that's not satisfying enough for me. I know I can't just have that. I know I need to have, I need my friends to come over, and I want to cook them dinner, and I know I want to go on a walk, and I know that I want to have chats with my roommate. So I know those are the things that I need, but I don't think that it's inherently a problem to interact with people online or consume that kind of content. Like anything, I think you need to be aware of what makes sense for you and makes sense for, and in moderation. Yeah. I mean, I've gone through a doom scroll of TikTok. Yeah. And I'm like, oh God, I feel like shit. Right? Yeah. And there was great content. Nothing bad popped up, but I just did that all day. And I go, okay, so we need to do something more interactive tomorrow. Yeah. But you know, I think no one can really, I think you have to decide for yourself if you feel lonely.
Yeah.
'Cause maybe someone gets a lot of gratification from interacting in those chats and talking to those people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it comes down to that, like, just because you're alone, does that make you lonely?
Yeah.
And for everyone, that's something different for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's a hard thing to figure out, though.
Yeah.
I think, and I think it's because social media is tied to so much of what we do. So making this one comment about, you know, interacting with people online and being in these chats doesn't make you lonely.
No.
But also considering what does social media do to the brain, right? And so you're seeing all of this content, seeing all these people doing these things, seeing what your life should be.
Yes.
It can make you feel lonely, right? So there's so many different aspects to social media and the content and the media in general that we consume, that one aspect of it does not equal loneliness, but another can cause the feeling of loneliness. And I think a part of growing up and a part of, you know, really analyzing yourself is saying, okay, am I okay with being alone with myself, or do I feel immensely lonely, and why is that? And working through that on yourself and saying, how do I get to a place where I can be alone but not feel alone, and be okay with that? And I think social media can make that harder because you're seeing people with people all the time, or seeing people in their 15 seconds.
There's a sense of like, we all have the same 24 hours.
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing something?
Exactly.
Why aren't you as successful as this person? Why aren't you hanging out with like these people are?
Yeah. Why aren't you doing all of these activities that I told you to do this summer with all of your friends? You're
Yeah.
like, well, because I wanted to watch a movie in bed, and I wanted to read my book, or I wanted to just lay and look out the window because I needed that for myself.
Yeah.
And I think growing, like, I had to learn not to beat myself up for not being out with people all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and being okay with being with myself, but then also not letting myself just do that. So it's this balancing act that I think everyone has to figure out for themselves. And I think that's an inherent part of growing up. But I think social media can frazzle it and make it harder to do that, to come to those conclusions, to do that mental work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when you grow up, you're not surrounded by people as much. You know, I think I've seen a lot of people talk about, like, when you're in elementary school or like your first kind of years of schooling, you are surrounded by your friends all the time. You're always there, and you probably live in the same town, so they live down the street. And so you're surrounded by these people. University, people talk about how you will never be closer to your friends, live proximity closer to your friends than you do in university, because they live down the hall or they live in the same town. Like, you are as close to that. And there's this switch that people feel once they graduate, that, oh my goodness, my friends live far away now.
Yeah.
We are not just down the hall from each other. And this kind of fear of my community has always been made for me by the circumstance. And then you're trying to now navigate this world where you have to create the community from the ground up by yourself. And you're like, how do I do that? And people are like, do I go to a bar and talk to people and say, do you want to be my friend? Or do I like join like an adult, like sports league? Or do I do, you know, like trying to, like, your people on social media are like, I am an adult now. How do I make friends? Because it's so hard and no one tells you. Because when you're 6, you walk up and you're like, do you want to be my friend? And do you want to play Wizards and Dragons? And they're like, yeah, I do.
Exactly.
Easy.
Yeah.
If I walked up to someone in a bar, I was like, do you want to be my best friend and we'll play Wizards and Dragons? They probably look at me like I was a dragon.
I don't know, if someone walked up to me in a bar and said, do you want to be my friend and do you want to play Wizards and Dragons? I'd say, hell yeah, baby. Like, I'm a dragon.
I'm a dragon.
Better start running.
You're like, what D&D variant is this?
Get some spells ready, baby.
So next time I will run into you in a bar and say, Wizards and Dragons.
Yes.
Yes.
If anyone listening to this ever bumps into me at the bar, if you do not start the conversation with, do you want to play Wizards and Dragons? I will be walking away.
Oh. So this is great because we're both chronically online.
Right, yeah, it's good. We've sort of got connection was sort of
I'm glad I'm with a fellow. Like, now I can really get to talk about this stuff.
I also spent a lot of time like in fandoms, but never contributing.
Yeah.
So I think I always found the internet kind of like lonely because I was like, I was seeing these fandoms, but I was never like fully contributing to them. And I was like, oh my God, all of these people, we would make such good friends. But like, I can't contribute anything to
anything. And there's always like the Tumblr message being like, hey, I love that post you made. Let's be friends. Like that was like a thing on Tumblr of just like air quotes walking up to someone in their DMs, because it wasn't sliding. It was like jaunting over and being like, hi, let's be pals. And I was like, yeah. And I mean, Tumblr is so interesting for community because you have these people that made up like, so I love your shoelaces. Thanks, I got from the president. Yeah. Right? That was to spot people in public.
Yeah.
If they're from Tumblr.
Yeah.
That was the idea behind it, being like, if I see someone from Tumblr or someone I think, you know, I'll say, oh, I like your shoelaces. And the response is,
thanks. I got them for the president.
Exactly. And so it was this need to find each other in the wild and have this real life interaction.
Did anyone ever do that?
I'm sure people have. I had someone, not a stranger, but someone say it to me. And I was like, I fully just said, thanks. Oh. And they looked at me and went, did you get that from the president? And I was like, oh my God, I was given the perfect opportunity and I didn't take it. One, stupid. But then you have DashCon, this immense need. Your eyes just got so big.
That's like a sleeper agent activation code.
With the ball pit. So you have DashCon, which was this convention. A bunch of people on Tumblr were like, wouldn't it be so cool if we had a Tumblr convention, like kind of like VidCon, right? They wanted this convention where you would have panels about like fandom studies and people would come and talk about fandom and talk about Tumblr. And these people tried to do it. I mean, there's really great video essays. If you just look up DashCon on YouTube, you'll find some great content about it. It
was like a spectacular flop.
It was a huge disaster because the people weren't prepared. They didn't know what they were doing, and they tried to put a convention on, and there was a little bit, I think if I'm right, like a little bit of like shady business.
Yeah.
But more or less, you can see that people were so gung-ho about it that people were willing to take flights to this because they wanted that in-person community despite having it online. So maybe that is, you know, something that we should be taking into consideration is people do have this community, and they're maybe not lonely per se, but there is this like innate need hunger to meet people in person, to have that physical interaction.
Well, I think it happens with like subcultures as well now, because so many like subculture on the internet, like there's not this. People will like listen to the music and wear the clothes because they find it through the internet, but they haven't got the sense of community within subcultures, and they haven't got like that actual sense of what the subculture was about anymore. Yeah. So like people, I do think there is something lost. Not always. Often when it comes to internet community, there is a sense of we're missing something. Yeah. We're missing this in-person interaction. And it isn't the organic creation of community that you get in the real world doesn't really translate. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think this is kind of not going against everything that I've already said, but now I'm like really, I don't think that the community that you create on the internet is inherently bad or inherently unworthy, but it's interesting to see that there is this want to have a physical manifestation of it, and be that going to a convention, right? So like I went to conventions when I was younger. I would go to like Comic-Con, and I went to an anime convention, and I went with my friend, so I already had like these people that I was going with, but there was something about being in a convention center dressed to the nines. Better believe it. I was cosplaying I was great. It was great.
Who did you cosplay as?
Oh, I've done a few. Okay. So for my very first one though, it was for an anime convention. So I went as this character called Menma from a very, very sad anime called Ao Hana Hana. But there was something about going to this convention and walking up to people saying like, oh, can I take your photo? I love your cosplay. And them coming up to me and wanting a photo of my cosplay and talking to them about the show and then be like, oh my gosh, I love this show. I'm like, you're the only one that knows it.
Yeah.
And, you know, going to the artist alley and that kind of thing. And for Comic-Con, going to like meet new comic artists. And there's something like I was already interacting with all of this on the internet. Granted, I wasn't interacting directly. So maybe that's my experience, is because now I finally had an easy way to directly interact with people.
Yeah.
And I was now kind of providing content because I was cosplaying.
Yes.
But no, there's something about like the convention sphere and people wanting to be in person with people. People spend money to go to fly to conventions.
Yeah.
Because they're like, this is the space. This is the place with the people that I can physically interact with.
There's that hunger for the real world interaction.
My other cosplays, just get I'm out of the way because I'm
there.
really proud of them. I did a steampunk Ariel, and my friend was steampunk Alice.
Wow.
And my other one was, I did Raven from Teen Titans.
Oh, very cool.
That was my best one, I think. I made the cape and everything. We're really proud.
Well, with that, I am going to draw this exam to a close.
You're like, with
Pencils.
the cosplay talk.
Oh, we're talking about cosplay and anime. Let's stop. Let's stop that. Time's up. You may put your pencils down, or I suppose probably a pen.
I have a accommodation. I get a laptop.
Oh, you got a laptop?
Yep.
Oh, okay. You can shut your laptops. This exam is now over. Kate,
how did I do?
Can you give me your thesis statement I just put my laptop away. I do need the question. Hold on. Kate, can you give me your thesis statement to the question? Quote, television is a form of entertainment which permits millions of people to listen to the same joke at the same time and yet remain lonesome. T.S. Eliot. Are social media any better?
I'm going to try and be concise.
Go ahead.
Which I've never been in my life, but I think social media has allowed for people to branch out their definition of community. And I think community and I'm using community as another way as a differentiation from lonesomeness, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know what the actual opposite word would be. Is there an opposite word for lonesomeness or loneliness? Companionship?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think social media has broadened people's definition of community, companionship, and interaction. And I think it should not be looked down upon. I think it is a valid form of interacting with the world around you and interacting with people that aren't around you or can't be around you.
Yeah.
I think it has made the world in ways more connected than ever, because we get to see what, with TikTok, what strangers are doing, what's happening in this town, in this random space. But also it can feel like we're also very far apart from each other. Yeah. Because you feel like you maybe are watching a world that you're not a part of. So I think it's this double-edged sword. And I think there's also this innate craving for in-person physical interaction that we have seen with, people loving to go to conventions, or when internet friends want to meet up in person. There's something so exciting about that. You see those videos of people like running at each other in the airport. So T.S. Eliot saw television as a moment of community, but inherently lonesome. I think that social media is a moment of community, but is not inherently lonesome. I think it can cause loneliness, but I don't think it's inherently lonesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to have a stronger thesis.
No, that was a really great one. I feel like you really summed it up really well.
Thank you. So, can this happen in every exam? Like I say my thesis and someone's like, no, you did a really good job.
That was great. Well, Kate.
Yes.
Thank you for taking
this
exam. We have reviewed your application.
One page.
We have scrutinized it. And we have decided to welcome you
Oh
into the hallowed halls of the exam hall. I don't know why this turned into a Broadway musical.
I need to call my mom. She's going to be so
Welcome.
proud.
How does it feel?
It feels amazing. It feels like, do you like musicals?
I do.
You know Legally Blonde the musical?
Yeah.
You know when she sees her name up there in black and white?
Yes.
And she goes, oh my God, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just break out into song.
I am thrilled to welcome you.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm thrilled to accept your application.
Yay.
Now, if you are lucky enough to be an appointed fellow to All Souls in Oxford, you are given funding for a 7-year period to fund any research project of your choice. You are given free board.
Ooh.
You are given a salary. You are given access to study any subject that you want at Oxford. And you are given contacts of leading professionals and experts in your area. So, Kate, my question to you,
Yeah.
if you had these 7 years, what would you do with that time?
I think, I probably want to look into fandom.
Yeah.
And again, kind of this idea of what is it and why is it and the phenomena that it is. And because we've had fandom for such a long time, I think Beatlemania, right? And even before that. And
I feel like the Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Conan Doyle's,
Yeah.
the Sherlock Holmes fans, that's a sign of a very sort of like kind of that Beatlemania,
Right.
Beatlemania craze around Sherlock Holmes.
around Sherlock Holmes. And then also like before the internet, you have like the Star Trek fandom and how they would interact with magazines, right? And fan magazines. And you also have the Doctor Who magazine that was a huge thing. And the fan clubs. It's been around for such a long time. But I think it's also shifted because of the internet. And I think it's fascinating to see how, again, people are curating these communities. And we were talking about how it's, we have this like innate need, maybe want for these communities, and how people are, if they can't get them in their town, they make them online because there's something they want to talk about. And they're really passionate about Star Wars and they need to talk to someone about Star Wars. And maybe it's, they need to talk about their theories, their breakdowns, their analysis, or maybe they just really like the music and the movie and they want to talk about how cool it is, right?
Hell yeah.
And so I think that's really fascinating. And I'm also really fascinated about how fandom is this space for, I find it filled mostly with a lot of AFAB or young women. And I think it's fascinating that there's a kind of this like community of these people that are creating things. And we were talking about this kind of earlier, this idea of like some fandom, some aspects of fandom are capitalist, right? You're making keychains and sweatshirts and, you're going to conventions. And so you're spending money and people are making money, right? But then there's also a lot of parts of fandom that are just labors of love. So some fan art, right? People just draw it because they want to draw something and they want other people who enjoy this particular thing to also enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think sometimes people, obviously when you paint something, I can look at it and enjoy it. But if you're painting two or a group of characters or you're painting a scene or you're doing like fan art or whatever, that's very particular of them saying, I know you enjoy this thing and I've created this thing for myself, but also for you, free of charge. Fanfic, people write these sometimes breathtaking pieces of work.
I think I'm going to verify this, but I think one of the longest pieces of known fiction is like a Sonic fan fiction.
So the longest I want to say is actually no longer Sonic. It is a fanfic of the TV show The Loud House on Nickelodeon. And it's just like a gazillion words.
What? Wait, hold on.
I don't know if that's the longest. I think that's the longest fanfic right now. I haven't read it, but I know these.
It's this is insane.
Okay.
For a very long period of time, a Chronicle of Ancient Sunlight, written by Henry Williamson, published in 15 volumes between 1951 and 1969, was considered the longest novel in English, and it was a Lord of the Rings fan fiction. And it was 2.4 million words.
Jeez Louise.
However, fanfiction.net The longest fan fiction on the site is The Loud House Revamped.
Yep.
An ongoing crossover fan fiction of The Loud House, which has been over 16,750,000 words long since around 2020.
Yeah. No, I found that. I thought that was so funny. I was like, The Loud House, really? This like.
So I mean, the longest known novel in English is a fan fiction.
Yeah.
And that's 2.4 million words, which is absolutely
insane.
Which is then just completely like surpassed by a Loud House fan fiction.
Yeah.
So there's something really interesting about this insane drive to create work about a pre-existing thing just because you're passionate about it.
Because you're passionate about it. And also and it's this idea of like, you're not just making it for yourself too. You're not just keeping it in a drive. There's people that make all of this content for this community. This sometimes very silly stuff. Like I think the Loud House one's a bit silly and like that's part of it. Yeah. And some really actually like breakdowns of the content that they're watching, like really analytical stuff about trying to break down this content and grow it. And it's all for free. They can't make money off of it. It's not possible. And it's this idea of like this people will create, people will do labor for passion, right? And I think that's a very interesting thing. And I think a lot of I think fandom studies and kind of this idea of pop culture is not taken as seriously as other things. So I think that's why I would also want to look at it. Why do things become popular? Why are we obsessed with things? Why are things deemed popular, but then also looked down upon? And I look at kind of like, who are the tastemakers of the world? And really it's teenage girls. They're looked down upon for their interests. And then a few years later, their interests are the most amazing, the cool thing, the revolutionary thing, and those girls were on it from day one. Yeah. But because teenage girls are looked down upon, you can't like it when they like it. Yeah, it must be silly and frivolous. Yeah. But they know what they're talking about.
Have there been any barriers that you faced in education that you think could be removed by those 7 years? Or is there anything what sort of barriers did you face over your time in education that would be aided by having sort of all this funding and time and support?
I think having the ability to talk to experts, right? And having that ability to like really like get conversations from people, because I do better with learning from someone's mouth than I do reading something. And so growing up in school, I was kind of like doing fine, but not really. And it wasn't until I was I think everyone knew, but I didn't leave public school until I was 10, and I went to a dyslexic school. And this school was absolutely amazing. I'm so privileged to be able to go to this school because they had the resources to help me and find a way to get me not only to be able to read and write like my peers, but ahead of them. Yeah. Something that people at my old school didn't think was going to be possible. Like even reading at their level or writing at their level or interacting with content. So I think looking at that and being able to know how I learn, right? So that's what that school did for me. It taught me how I learn, and I learned through conversation. I learned through interaction. Though I can read and though I can properly, consume articles, I still find it very not as useful to me as talking to an expert, talking to someone, getting there, getting it from what's the word? Getting it from the horse's mouth, or don't get
getting it from the horse's mouth.
Getting it directly from the source.
That's an idiom.
Yeah, I think is it don't look to gift horse in the mouth?
No, it's getting it from.
And why would a horse be giving information? What is the horse giving you?
How did this horse get in this hospital?
Whose horse is that?
Oh yeah, straight from the horse's mouth. Mm-hmm. What are we getting from this horse's mouth? Carrots?
Well, I wouldn't want a carrot out of a horse's mouth.
It'd be all sloppy.
I'm telling you, as a reformed horse girl, those boys are chompers. Gonna bring that back up.
See, it's all related.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
We're piecing
baby.
it together. So being able to talk to experts, I think, would be really helpful. I would also find that the extended amount of time would be nice because I would be able to get a lot of information. But I think also it'd be nice to be able to not have such a short ticking time, being able to take a break and pull back.
Yeah.
Because I think if people are studying or looking at something, you can become too ingrained in it, too tunnel visioned. And I think one of the most important parts of education is being exposed to multiple fields, multiple things. I think have a focus area, have something that you really enjoy. But I find that when you can go and bring something else from another field, you're opening twice as many doors when you enter a room, because you go, oh, well, I know this about this thing. Is that connected? Where is this connection coming from? Why is this similar? And then I feel like you can answer more questions. You can find a more interesting path. So I think having those 7 years would allow you to not speed run, 2, take a break so you can do other things, right? You can go and do something that's unrelated, but it might not be unrelated. It might make you question something, or you might have just enjoyed yourself and be, rejuvenated to get back into working.
Yeah. Time is money.
Time is money. And I think it would also help with, I think a lot of people get burned out now. And I think if you have 7 years seems a long time, having that ability to pace yourself.
Oh my God.
And not just crunch until you collapse. Which I think is this mentality in a lot of education. Just get through it. Just get past it, and then you can break down for a little bit, and then you have to get back onto it. But why should my downtime be completely recuperating from being, burned out?
Right.
It should be, my downtime is enjoyed. It's actually flourishing, and then I can get back to work still.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would also need, like I said, accommodation. So I'd need a computer.
I think they could give you a computer. Yeah. They're giving you somewhere to live.
I get time and a half. So do I get 3.5 years on top of my 7?
That's such a good question. Well, listen, my dyslexia accommodations mean you have to give me more time. So
more time, please.
More time and more money, please.
Please. You can just put that right in my hand, please. I'll take more money and more time.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. And then it's not necessarily a difficulty that I had in school, but I would say it's actually a privilege that I got. Is my school, when I went to dyslexic school, which I love saying, it's my favorite thing. I went to dyslexic school, is they really taught me how to say what I need.
Oh, brilliant.
And they were all about you saying what you need and why you need it and when you need it.
That's really important.
Self-advocacy, because I think a lot of people are too scared to do it.
I think even not even thinking about neurodiversity, so many people don't know how to just say, I need X. And I think part of it is when you're raised as a woman, there's a sense of oh no, I can't ask, I've got to, there's this,
I've got to handle it myself.
Yeah. But I think then I worked in SEN, in special educational needs. There's an extra layer with young people who struggle with communication. Yeah. And it's really important that self-advocacy in teaching young people across the board, especially if they have special educational needs, how to advocate for themselves.
Yeah. And they were very clear about, look, you have, gone through this program. You are able to, read perfectly well. You're able to spell decently. And you can do these things, but you need to be able to speak up for yourself, because people not that they're not going to believe me, but they're not going to give them to me without asking, and I'm also going to have to fight for it. Yeah. And I think because I learned that at that school, I would really want to bring that into this, because I'm getting these things from the fellowship, but I'm sure I'm going to have to try and be like, hey, I need to talk to this person, and I need to talk to them at this time, or I need this right now. and being able to take advantage of the things that I've been given, because I'm curious about people that have done this and then have been too nervous to ask for something because they've already been given access to all these things, but then asking for the thing is difficult. So I would hope that would, I mean, I still find it hard. I'm not like being able to walk in and be like, I need this, this, and that. But I know that when I need something, I've been taught to
get it
or try my best at least and
fight for it
and fight for, you know, the things that I need.
Absolutely.
And so I would hope that would aid me actually.
Well, Kate, thank you.
Well, thank you
so much for being here. This has honestly been such a joy to have you on the podcast. Before we say goodbye, is there anything you want to plug, promote, shout out, any parting words of wisdom that you shall leave us with?
I'm not doing anything right now, so I have nothing to plug, unfortunately. But thank you for the offer.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a lovely conversation. And any parting words? Tip your waiters. Be nice to vampires. And put on sunscreen.
So true.
Yeah, that's my parting words.
Especially if you are a vampire.
Especially if you're a vampire. And be careful around a horse's mouth, I guess.
Keep your hands away.
Keep your hands away.
They like to bite.
They like to bite. Yeah, there's so many idioms with horses' mouths.
You can lead a horse to water. You can't force it to
drink. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
Who was this talking horse?
Mr. Ed, the talking horse. It's okay.
I just fully, my eyes got really big and I tilted my head in confusion.
I'll probably cut this out, but Mr. Ed is like a really early American TV show that was like really famous.
And
it was about Mr. Ed called it was Mr. Ed, the talking horse.
Mr. Ed, the talking horse.
Kate, thanks for being here today and talking about horses.
Thank you for having me and letting me talk about fandom and fanfic. My friends are going to hear this and they'll be like, of course you started talking about anime. Like, what the hell?
I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to get 3 more drinks.
Yeah! More drinks. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode of The Exam Hall. If you enjoyed today's episode and you want to stay updated with The Exam Hall and maybe get some special behind the scenes, then you can follow us on social media at The Exam Hall Pod on Instagram and Twitter. And if you, for some reason, want to know what I'm up to, then you can follow me on social media at Cherry the Eckle. That is cherry like the fruit, the like the word the, and Eckle not like the Lancashire pastry, but Eckel. And you can also find me on YouTube at Cherry Eckle. If you listened to today's episode and you thought, hey, that sounds like a fun little conversation, I wish I could have a conversation like that. We don't need to wish. I am your fairy godmother and I am granting all of your wishes true. No, I'm your fairy pod mother. I am your fairy pod mother and I am granting all of your wishes come true. Come be a guest on The Exam Hall. You can click the link in the description of this episode, which will take you to an expression of interest form, or you can find us on social media and just send out a message. Or if you know where I live, you can stand outside my house ominously for a few days and maybe eventually I'll let you in. A very special thank you to Boundless Theatre, whose support made this podcast possible. So, I mean, depending on how you look at it, it could also be a curse if you think this is a bad podcast. Please do share, subscribe, rate the podcast, tell your friends about it if you liked it. Any support really, really goes a long way. Thank you very, very much for listening to this episode of The Exam Hall. I will see you next time with another episode in 2 weeks. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day and a lovely rest of your life. And I hope if it's not lovely right now, it gets better very, very soon. And I hope this podcast made it just a little bit better. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.